Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Before we start off tonight's final chapter in the series, I just wanted to quickly address some of the discussions that are going on behind the scenes on Facebook and Twitter, especially regarding Dogman Encounters Radio. Unfortunately, looks like it has been taken down from the YouTube platform. Commiserations in my regards to Vic. I will speak to him tonight. Because of this, a lot of people are deciding to, move on to other different types of platforms in which we can get our content over to you guys, and of course in which you can keep up to date with ourselves. A lot of people have spoke on moving over to Patreon in the months leading up to this sort of shenanigans that's happening now, and I've thought about it. So as of this week, I will be uploading to Patreon at least twice a week. So if you do want to check out my Patreon, do head over there, and we'll post a link to that in my description below. As ever, guys, please do let me know what you think below in the comments. Please do like and share, and don't forget to hashtag Team Fear. And without further ado, let's get into the final chapter of the series, entitled The Return to Taylor, Mississippi. Let's get straight into that. The day that we found the town mayor crudely displayed, almost medieval to the townspeople, we finally got the recognition that something had indeed changed. Something had brought an evil so ancient to Taylor that even the Dogmen were uneasy. After speaking with some of the local sheriffs, I learned that over the last week or so, after dark, some of the surrounding fields had been filling with deer and various other fauna. The hills in the forest night air stifled with an overwhelming feeling of anxiety or fear. Several young and old people had been rushed to hospital with extreme distress and paranoia, some even having panic attacks. As every night leading up to my arrival, and since the night was filled with long haunting howls, one official even going as far to say that he knew of the Dogman. His father had raised him to watch the trees when in the woods, not to follow strange calls or noises. Well, he added that 3 separate residents that live in the remotest parts of the outer limits bordering the fields and forests of Taylor. They had all called into his station to report numbers of large dog monsters, devil dog monsters, in the fields, almost like a pack, like they were preparing for something or were scared of something in the forest. Surely, they're not scared by anything, I had thought to myself. I was given full access to the gun store's stock, whilst escorted by the sheriff. We asked the store owner to smelt down some high-grade silver into shot, and we mixed these with the Dragon's Breath shells and fully kicked out grenades. Armour-piercing ammo, the works. I was starting to feel better already. We made our way over to the hardware store and grabbed what we needed. The plan was simple enough. We'd draw him to us and get him right where we need him. Trap him momentarily so we can get in close and finish the job. I planned with Dean to set up multiple trenches with upturned stakes in the bottom. If we could immobilise him, impale him on the thick stakes, maybe, just maybe, we could move in and turn his ass to Swiss cheese. Not forgetting that a couple of explosives should completely decimate him. We finished up and gathered another small team of men and one woman. I soon was told that she was the local historian, Izzy, and had a natural passion or flair for the occult. I greeted the guys and went over to speak with Izzy. I wanted to know if there was anything that we could do to even the odds, or if she could somehow attract the werewolves to the barn, and eventually to us. Izzy explained it was very risky, as it was almost like saying welcome to all werewolves close by. Like a lunch bell, I added humorously, to which she didn't see the funny side of my joke. Yes, like a lunch bell for idiots, she responded. But eventually she agreed to perform another type of blood ritual, using mine and Dean's blood. In doing so, we would hold a bond to the land, and ancient ancestors would begin to whisper menacingly, taunting the werewolves louder and louder as if right inside their minds, and keep harassing the 2 werewolves, driving them mad and eventually driving them out of the deep forest to where we needed them. At the old barn where it all began. With us being linked to the land like this, using the same barn, it'd be like a great beacon to the werewolves. They won't realise it, but they will be willingly running towards their own doom. This time, we knew what to expect. This time, we were playing for keeps. The local pastor paid us a visit as we gathered at the town square preparing ourselves, final kit checks and communication checks. All was set. He went about blessing each of us and our equipment. I mentioned the old series of documents that I'd found, and he nodded his weary head and said, Yes, I have often wondered when this day would finally show itself. I remember the years when the creatures first appeared. Such dark times. So much sadness and loss descended upon the good people of this town. I also remember my father tried desperately to talk with him. Who? I asked, intrigued. The old pastor took a moment, almost seemingly travelling right back to the time he was speaking of. His eyes glazed over, and I asked again, Who do you mean, Pastor? He sighed again. I am talking about Mr. Peters and his cousin, dear boy. I take it you read that far? Yes, I answered. It details the family taking drastic and catastrophic measures to try and rid the town's plight with the Dogman back then. Yes, the dark elements were called upon, and a gruesome end was met by all except the boy and one other, he added. I'm sorry, Pastor, but one other. I was under the impression the whole family was cut down in one night. The young baby whisked away from the scene and taken across the country. I responded, looking more than puzzled, but he added another spur of mystery to this operation. I see. Then there is much that you do not know. Firstly, only the authorities and a few of the woodsmen are aware of its presence out in the surrounding fields and forests. You see, my dear boy, on the night of that demonic calling, Mr. Peters and his cousin, a man named Victor Peters, were eldest in the family, and so it was only them who would be privy to the ceremony. As the rest of the Peters family slept in the home on the family's farm, the two men made their way into the nearby forest to an old disused barn used for cattle, etc. The reason for this, I assume, as it was fairly strong in its structure compared to the other ones. Anyway, once inside of the barn, they began the rituals, each making blood sacrifices to the chosen demonic sire. They shackled themselves to the structure and commenced the ritual rites. Unknown to the baby's father, Mr. Chambers, is it? He questioned. Yes, that's correct. He was adopted into the Chambers family, I replied. Yes, well, unknown to the father, but his cousin Victor had not closed his shackles, and so they received their new power and began transforming. A moment where both men would be, no doubt, incredibly vulnerable. Cousin Victor unshackled himself and drew a long dagger from somewhere close to him, and then plunged it into the chest of Mr. Vickers, killing him near instantly. That night he would escape out into the wilderness, never to be heard of or seen again. Many of us believed the killer had taken him with him, or something more terrible. But when authorities discovered the post-mortem results, suggestions was it was indeed murder. Soon the town mayor, Mayor Roberts, insisted it was kept quiet, as so it didn't worry the town's good people. Many years passed, and then the odd groups of campers or hikers would start to go missing, or found mutilated. It was him. He was lurking in the forests or along Old Taylor Road for anyone who might be stranded from a breakdown or whatever. Prowling, targeting the weak or alone and waiting for any opportunity to feast. I looked at the pastor's weathered face in disbelief. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but it all made sense somehow. If this was true, then could it be that they have reunited at last and now plan a coup of the townspeople, killing those who stand against them and infecting those who don't, or, as I would suspect, feel that they had no choice? I can't let this happen, I said to the pastor, angry that the authorities and officials hadn't taken him out sooner if they were aware he was picking off people who strayed too far from the town or too deep into the forest, especially if they'd stayed after dark. Someone should be held responsible, but you know as well as I, that ain't happening. Not in this lifetime, at least. The pastor nodded in agreement. I thanked him for his blessings and speaking with me, and he went on his way again. We loaded up and headed out to get the traps ready. The plan was more than risky. I hadn't accounted for 2 werewolves, but I was confident it would work. We just needed to draw them out. As we drove out of town towards the fields, we stopped to pick up Jerry. The other 2 trucks of guys going on ahead to get things ready. We were going to make multiple ground traps in several different locations bordering the forest, particularly the old cattle barn, where the ritual was carried out all those years before. My money was in that being our best shot, as the powerful energy used in the ritual had a bond or link to that location. Anyway, we got out of the truck and walked up to the small red block pathway to Jerry's front door of his family home. The doorbell played a cheerful tune as his beautiful wife answered, looking ready to burst. She was so far gone. "Hi, Susie," said Dean. "Is Jerry around, sweetheart?" She looked over at me suspiciously and then smiled at Dean. "Sure thing, Dean. I'll just get him," she replied, before turning and disappearing into the house once more. A short time later, Jerry answered, looking more than worried. "Hi, Jerry," myself and Dean said. "Listen, this is kind of difficult. Is there somewhere a little more private that we can talk?" I asked him. "Yeah, sure, this way," responded Jerry before stepping out of the door and walking us around to the back of the property and down to his old barn. "Listen, I'm done. Before you try and tell me we're going back to get that thing." "I'm not, fellas," said Jerry before I had even a chance to ask him anything at all. "Look, we know you're scared, Jerry. Hell, we are too, and for good reason, buddy. But you got a family now. Did you really want your kid growing up around here with that thing out there?" I added. "He's right, Jerry," said Dean. "It's worse than we thought. There's 2 werewolves. It's a long story, and one we will explain to you. But we need you on this, Jerry," I added as Jerry looked at us with worried eyes. "Okay, but what have I got to do?" he responded. "Well, Jerry, it's really quite simple. We're going to draw them out and lead them to a trap where hopefully we can immobilize them and move in for the kill." "So you mean you want me to be bait?" he replied, shocked and slightly pissed off. "No, Jerry. We're all going to be bait. With 2 of them, we're going to really need to piss them off to get them to follow us." "And what if they catch us before then?" "Then what, huh?" he added angrily. "Then, kid, it's up to you or I to pull a pin on the grenades and shove it so far down their throat it's got more than heartburn to worry about after eating your ass. You've got to do this for your kid, man. Your beautiful wife. Do it for yourself, otherwise they're just going to come to town one night and slaughter everyone who stands against them." I said, hoping this would be enough to convince him to help us. Jerry walked off over to the old rickety wooden fence that looked out across the field towards the tree line and the dark forest beyond. "He was right here last night," Jerry said quietly under his breath. "What, kid?" I responded. "I said he was here, right here last night," he replied whilst pointing out 2 sets of long claw marks along the fence in front of him. "I was checking everything was locked before bed and he was just standing here, staring straight at the house. When he saw me behind the curtains, he pointed his damn claws at me and drew his thumb under his neck like, 'I'm going to cut your throat.' I didn't know what to do, so I just closed the curtains again and went to bed with my shotgun. When I awoke this morning, I checked on the horses in the stables." "Oh God," I muttered, knowing what was coming next. "They're all dead! Every single one! All 7 horses dead with their throats ripped out. I haven't said anything to Susie yet. I don't want to panic her. But the smell is already kicking up from down there. She will know soon enough." "Damn, kid, I'm so sorry. You've got to take a stand. I will kill them, kid. I just need to get them where I need them. I promise," I said, hoping this offered some comfort to him. "Yeah, me too, Jerry. I'll get a couple of the guys to help you out tomorrow and clear them out. Don't worry, it's going to be okay," added Dean, patting Jerry on his shoulder. "Let's get going then, gentlemen. We have a couple of dogs to put down," I declared before turning and heading back to the truck. We made our way back out to the long stretch of country road that cut straight through the fields, long grass either side of the road towering up over the truck windows. It's no wonder it gets so dark out here at night. In a car, it would be like driving through a tunnel of darkness. Some of the fields high with corn ready for harvest. It was literally perfect for the Dogman or Werewolves to ambush people who got stranded or drove too slowly. I imagined the countless missing person reports that I'd already heard in a region over the years. It was now so easy to picture them driving down the winding country road, possibly coming to a complete stop as an apparent animal was dead on the road, the headlights illuminating long beams of light through the foggy evening darkness. They would step out of the vehicle and walk closer, trying to decide what to do or what it is. Then, well, you know the next part. They would be set upon and dragged into the cornfield, off into the darkness. A shudder ran its way down my spine as I thought of all of this. And soon we pulled off the country road and into a dirt road, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, it was more likely compared to a classic Hollywood movie, a horror movie in the woods. Within seconds we were consumed by thick trees and brush as we cut our way through to rendezvous with the other members of the crew. The sunlight diminished considerably by the canopy engulfing our vehicle. Some minutes later the horrendous road cleared out and we could make out the other truck through the dense trees. Then, as we rounded a bumpy-ass turn, the derelict old Peters family barn stood, looking still strong, although years old. "They don't build stuff like this anymore," I remarked to the guys trying to lighten our imprisonment of dread ever building within our guts. The other team had nearly already dug out the first few traps. We'd agreed to try something more traditional and improvised a number of Apache foot traps with snares. Also, we would rig grenades to the snare lines. If that didn't finish them off, then we would also be unloading hellfire with the blessed hybrid silver dragon breath shells. And my goodness me, if that doesn't work, I will just have to cut their cursed head off. If that doesn't work, I will just have to cut their cursed heads off. If we can get them stuck and set off those snares and grenades, I think we'll be within a shot. Ha, no pun intended, gentlemen, I said, glancing up at Jerry in my rearview mirror. He turned to face me looking tense, but didn't voice it at all. He agreed and turned to look back at his window as we finally pulled up and got out. Myself and the boys unloaded the truck and made our way inside the old barn and started covering the walls with fresh hog's blood and deer urine. Then trailed that to the tree line, leaving no patch spared within a couple of 100 yards. The smell was insane as the sight, as men stretched out across the open field and walked up and down spraying the irony mixture until the tree line before turning and returning once more. It seemed as the word spread around Taylor of the crooked mare's demise and the impending threat of the werewolves that more and more people came to assist. Farmers from far and wide bringing more and more blood offered their assistance. Soon we would find out why. As a brave man, also a farmer named Big J came to see me, pulling up in his huge white Bronco and tipping his hat to me. "I hear you're looking to finish the Wolfman for good. I hope you know what world of pain you're getting yourself into," he said, then leaned out slightly and spitting his chewing tobacco on the ground in front of me, grinning from ear to ear. "Is that so, brother? Well, I mean, you're right about one thing. I am in for a whole new world of pain, but I'm taking that damn Wolfman's head with me. Are you here to help or just wanted my time?" I fired back with rage in my chest. Who the hell does this arsehole think he is? Big J, laughing out loud, opened his door to his jacked up Bronco and jumped out. "Oh, so you got it all worked out, huh?" he replied. I was too busy not laughing in his face after he jumped out of his mini monster truck. And I see how short he was. Literally, he couldn't have been taller than 4.5 feet, best 5. I was expecting a huge man to step out of this huge truck, but instead, redneck Tom Cruise did. Oh boy. Anyway, soon he and I calmed down and got talking. Big J went on to explain that he lived over in Water Valley, a close neighbour to Taylor, and had nearly lost everything one evening the month before. He claimed that the day of the attack of his family's farm, he was feeling sick and uneasy but couldn't figure out why. He kept looking to the tree line but never saw a thing. Then, that night, as his family slept, and he couldn't, and so he got up for some water. He had made his way to the upstairs landing at the top of the staircase. He looked again towards the trees, and this time he was glad he did. Creeping low at first was a figure seemingly gliding through the long grass in a field opposite his home. It caught his attention instantly, although it was discreet. His awareness that day saved his family and his life that night. As he was watching the figure, it got halfway across the field before suddenly it stopped. Jay leaned closer to the window, cupping his hand to gain a better look. Without warning, the figure strangely jumped up into the air by 10 feet at least and landed a further 20 feet ahead, closer to the home. It jumped again and again until eventually he could see what it was. It was a nightmare born of demonic power, and now it was coming for his wife and kids. Inside the old home was a connecting sub-basement, long since used and partially hidden behind some drywalling panels. If I could be quick, I could get them in there, and maybe he won't find them, Jay thought to himself. Quickly he raced around the home, waking his family from their slumber and grabbing the younger children as they all ran for the sub-basement downstairs. As Jay left the bottom of the stairs following, close behind his wife, he took one last look and see it smashing through the fence that surrounded his driveway. He only had seconds, if a minute at most, to get down to the sub-basement and hidden. With the children sobbing and confused at the drama, they made it just in time to hear the front room window implode as it came crashing straight through the glass with a loud thud. As the children were shushed and encouraged to hide, Jay and his wife looked up to the floorboards as each heavy bipedal step the werewolf made. Huge pieces of dust and dirt fell from the cracks in the boards and the beams. Jay's wife gasped loud. The walking upstairs instantly ceased. "Go, get in," Jay whispered as quietly as possible. His sweet wife, with tears streaming down her face, shaking her head in disapproval. "I'll be fine. I love you," he again whispered. The loud thuds of another step boomed again, and then all hell broke loose as it began roaring and smashing the home up, ripping through walls and sides. The heavy thumps ran up the stairs.
Thump, thump, thump.
Before enormous sounds of the bedroom doors being ripped off or kicked through. Long claw marks, almost with a span of 22 inches, trailed the walls upstairs as the werewolf had searched for all of them one by one. Minutes later, they all froze once more as the sound started to come back down the stairs. And eventually, the basement door crashed open and came clanking down the steps in bits and pieces. The werewolf's heavy breathing is all that could be heard as they all sat cuddled, holding their breath, waiting for whatever came next.
Thump, thump, thump.
Came its steps, and now the clacking of its long claws could be heard accompanying the thuds. All I could do was pray and pray, hoping to God the kids didn't make a sound. We were a good distance away in a separate crawl space, turned storage room, but all I could think is if you could hear our hearts as they jump in our chests, or the sweat that now was dripping from my head or all over my back. Shh. I motioned with my hand to the kids, and then the damn whisper started. Whisper? I asked, confused. Yes, whisper. Jay replied and went on further. As he started to look around, started sniffing really loudly and grunted this strange grunt mixed with a squeal. Man, it was creepy as hell. Well, if it couldn't get any worse, I started to hear this persistent whisper in my head or whatever. But it was sending me insane. As strange and gruesome images flashed before my eyes, I could hardly maintain my silence as white-hot pain surged through my head, and torrents of whispers got louder and louder, and then it stopped. I can't tell you how long we were there or how long he was, but I opened my eyes to see my wife and children power-white and panicked, but otherwise okay. I had apparently blacked out, but not before I did something to the werewolf. I have since learned that I am of ancient native bloodline, and my family have fought these beasts, these wolfmen, for hundreds of years at least, as shamans or hunters. Hey, I was as stunned as you probably are. He finished before once again turning to spit his tobacco out. So will you help us now, Jay? I then asked. I'm here, ain't I? He joked before we set about finishing the setup and heading into the forest as night began to fall. 25 good men went into that foreboding forest, while Izzy and 3 men waited and prepared for our guests. The plan was pretty straightforward. We would spread out like a search team but on dirt bikes. Myself and Dean at the front right, Big J and Jerry fronting the left. I figured that eventually either we would find them or, more likely, they will find us. We needed to hold them off and draw them out of the forest, hopefully with at least amount of casualties as possible. It was high risk, but somehow better than sitting and waiting for them to come to us. It was time to take the fight to them, something I'm sure they never expected. The forest was completely silent, save for the roar of the bikes. About 10 minutes into the forest I could smell them. I couldn't see them, but sure as hell is hot. I could smell that putrid, rotting blooded smell. It left a foul, metallic taste in my mouth that I couldn't seem to shift, no matter how much whiskey I swigged. We didn't have to wait long though, before the Dogman appeared alongside us. I would catch glimpses and flashes of them as they ran through the trees like they were twigs, but even as panicked as some of us were to the Dogman's arrival and presence, it was soon clear they weren't going to attack us, at least not yet. Either they wanted to help or possibly needed our help. Either way, we shared a common threat, one that would upset the food chain and natural order of the land. Very abruptly and seemingly from nowhere, the forest became very dark and the sun still hadn't set, but was close. Yet here in this particular section of forest, it was nearly pitch black. One by one we turned on our headlights as the bikes tore and weaved through, in and out of the dead fallen limbs and thick brush. Out of the dreadful darkness came a sickening long scream or howl, and we all slowed our dirt bikes down to a slow pace and then finally stopped, listening as the loud howl faded out again, waiting for any sign of the second werewolf, but none came. It sounded close, about 500 yards give or take, and moving fast as the crashing and creaking of tree limbs and brush were being ripped out of the ground like toothpicks. Let's get ready, gentlemen. Fire at will. Look after the man beside you, and he will do the same. And let's pray. We will make it home when this is over. Either on 2 feet or in a goddamn pine box. For Taylor, for your wives and children. Are you with me? I screamed across the dark, foggy forest to the men. Revving the shit out of my bike, we waited for that glimpse of where he was. And oh boy, did we get it. A couple of minutes later, with the sounds of his arrival getting louder and louder, his huge breaths as he sucked in air to his powerful werewolf lungs, bounding and smashing through the brush and trees.
BAM!
There he was. As he jumped through the last few trees between us and thick, impenetrable foliage and trees, he landed with one hand on the ground. Slowly, he raised himself up to stand full height. Nobody moved or said anything until I said, "Hey, you, yeah, you, damn demon's little bitch. How's it feel to kill your cousin, only to be cursed to hell for eternity?" Before letting off my new improved Benelli M2 automatic shotgun, filled with the Blessed Dragon Breath silver compound, I shot straight for this ugly face, watching the glowing hot silver and lead tear into his cheek and neck. Now he was pissed. Without a second to spare, everyone began firing upon him as he roared and turned to look at this outrageous defence by the common men of Taylor, Mississippi. Before we could begin to lure him, he managed to grab a couple of the guys closer to him, launching two against the trees with a sickening impact and immediate death. A couple more of the guys just ripped and torn to pieces. We wasted no more time and headed back towards the traps. He was soon following hot on our heels when suddenly the Dogman joined us again and began chasing him down. Often we stopped and he would be wrestling around for a moment before snapping the neck of the Dogman or tearing our arms off and biting their throats out. Then he continued his pursuit of us. 5 minutes later, Bill Chambers showed up. Well, the werewolf version of him. And he too burst from the canopy, jumping onto the Dogman that was attacking Victor and once more killing it stone dead. Victor took Bill's hand and Bill helped him back up. And then they turned to look at us, snarling and growling the deepest tone I think I've ever heard. More howls rang out in the distance as more dogmen were on their way. I grabbed my two-way radio and called through to Izzy to start the damn ritual already. And with that, seconds later, a mighty wind came howling and blustering through the trail from behind us towards the two werewolves. Immediately, they started to twitch their heads and then stumbled forwards towards the barn and traps, the direction behind us, and then the screaming started. Oh man, it was so damn haunting, like 1,000 souls all at once yelling for dear life. Victor looked up fast from his stupor straight at me. I smiled and said, "Surprised? Come and get me then." With that, Victor and Bill roared an enormous roar that shook the ground around us. "Come on now!" I shouted to the guys before redlining my bike and popping a wheelie out of there. We now had their attention and the ritual forcing them our way. We flew through the forest at breakneck speed, hitting jumps and tearing through brush as we could finally see the barn in sight. By now, it was pitch black out of the forest too. An old town of Taylor, Mississippi glowed with its lights off in the near distance. Leaving no time, I jumped off my bike and was joined by everyone else, Dean and Jerry, Big J and Izzy, out in front of the huge wind-battered open barn doors. Slowly, a minute or two later, the enormous abomination stumbled out of the tree line, no longer posing such a threat as the ritual's whisper held them firmly in its grip. As they approached, we opened fire on them, and they carried on trying to desperately tear one of us to shreds, but could never grab out in time before having a gun shoved in their face and hot lead fired down their throats. "It's working!" I shouted, and gradually they were forced closer and closer into the barn as we manoeuvred around them, still pumping them full of lead. Finally, Bill was the first to step into the small trap in the ground, as the sharp barbs inside shoved into his huge werewolf leg, and the right leg soon followed. Victor realised what was happening and made one last attempt to escape and jumped straight through the damn roof. "Shit!" I shouted as we ran around trying to catch him. As we did, the grenades rigged to the snares finally went off and exploded Bill's werewolf legs off at his hips. We made the turn around the corner to see the other werewolf, Victor, had stopped, no longer trying to escape, still in anguish at the ritual's torrents, yes, but his attention was drawn elsewhere. Looking up and around towards the fields and Taylor in the distance, Victor's enormous frame slightly silhouetted in Taylor's glow. There were red eyes everywhere. I mean everywhere. As far as I could guess, there were easily 70 sets of big red glowing eyes, all looking at Victor. I gulped loudly, and some of the men I could hear muttered that it was time to go before they scurried away back to their trucks. A couple even left their damn dirt bikes, dropping them where they stood only seconds before. Victor stepped back once more. Was he scared? Does a werewolf even have any emotions? He took another step, and as luck would have it, one of the guys had placed some other Apache ground traps around the back end of the barn in case they tried to smash straight through to escape. Victor made a final step and his leg suddenly fell into the trap. Again, as he struggled, the wooden barb stabbed into his mighty werewolf calf and foot. His howl was deafening, and the Dogman pack, the true full pack, not just a few soldiers, but all of them, slowly crept out of the darkness, ever closer to Victor as he struggled in pain. There were no grenades attached to these extra traps, so all we could do was watch and see what would happen. As the pack came ever closer, what must have been the alpha of the pack stepped out in front of his legion and towered over Victor. This creature was something else. Honestly, my jaw fell to the floor as he emerged from the great darkness. He had to have stood of a terrifying 11 feet, with a massive barrel chest and a tapered waist. His arms much longer than I stood tall. I could see his hot breath seemingly steaming out of his open maw as it whipped around in the breeze. The alpha leaned down closer at Victor and smelled deeply with a chest-rumbling growl. Victor, to his opportunity, grabbed and tried to swipe or bite the alpha's face or throat, as it was a huge mistake as he reacted with a mighty howl up into the night sky. In his large hand, he now stood, holding Victor down by his head. The alpha stopped howling and picked Victor up into the air before thrusting his razor-sharp claws and hand deep into Victor's ribcage, yanking and pulling out the werewolf's blooded organs. The pack howled in unison and scared the living daylights out of all of us. And then he threw the near lifeless body of Victor, the original werewolf, into the waiting baying pack in the field. The sounds that followed are too graphic to write here, but let's just say it took a long time for him to die as they hungrily ate at his body and organs. We slowly backed away back to the trucks, or some chose to return to their dirt bikes. As I turned the ignition and my headlights lit the field ahead, the scene was shocking. What I thought was maybe 70 dogmen at most was actually more like around 150. "Can we just get the hell out of here, please?" screamed Jerry, knocking me from my gaze. As we turned the truck around, the monstrous alpha turned to face us. "Go! Go, go, go!" Again, Jerry shouted in panic. I am. God, Jerry. You know what, sometimes you can be a real bitch. The alpha never leaving his gaze as we hauled us out of there and back for the final return to Taylor. Wow. Hope you guys enjoyed that as much as I did writing it. Thank you all so much for your wonderful positive feedback. Absolutely humbled and touched, really am, and it just spurs me on to write more and more. As ever, please do let me know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share, and don't forget to hashtag Team Fear. And remember, if you're ever driving down old Taylor Road with the long grass and cornfields either side of you, the sun dipping in the horizon, make sure you keep your eyes on the road and not at any distractions. And above all, remember, be safe, not sorry.